Welcome back to the tennis vlog for our second round Wimbledon Q&A. We can only hope and pray that firstly the stream doesn't drop and also that I don't get a copyright strike for this video, because if you were aware, the first live stream that I did of the Q&A for the first round, there was actually a bit of an issue with it. I got a copyright strike for just sitting here talking for an hour. That got sorted out, thankfully. So here we are, ready to answer your questions on the second round. Now get them in quickly and I can answer your questions and talk tennis as soon as possible. And you don't have to sit listening to me talk rubbish for a bit. But just so that those who aren't fully up to date on Wimbledon get a picture of where we're at, second round action has pretty much just closed or is drawing to a close. So the final 32 players have been decided on the men's and women's sides. There have been a fair few upsets. There were many in the first round, but they have continued in the second round, not least today with defending champion Angelique Kerber going out on the women's side, and also Marin Cilic, former finalist, going out in straight sets to João Sousa, who is a Portuguese player and not your first pick to do well on grass. So I would argue that some of the more recent upsets have actually been more surprising than the likes of Alexander Zverev and Stefanos Tsitsipas going out to quality opposition. Not to say that those who've taken up players today are not quality opposition, but the upsets of Zverev, Tsitsipas, etc. were billed as extremely shocking and surprising, when I don't necessarily think they were if you take their opponents into consideration. I can see questions coming in. Thank you for joining the live stream. And I was a bit silly and I crossed it off on here, which means I'm going to have to pull it up to see your questions. Welcome to the live, and if you're not here on time, do not worry, you can watch this back. It will be on my channel. And also, if you have not subscribed, please do subscribe, because that's how you will know when stuff is going on. So let's have a look at some of the questions that have been asked so far and get cracking on rounding up the first two rounds. Someone says, I'm very disappointed with Naomi Osaka and Angelique Kerber. It all depends on the expectations you had for these players coming in. Osaka had been in iffy form, and what I've said of Osaka for a while is that she is a player who rises on the big occasions, and that's what makes her so great. She's won 3 titles in her career. 2 of them were Grand Slams, and one of them was the most high-profile tournament outside of a Grand Slam. So you can see here a player who really steps it up for the big occasions, but in recent times, I think she's been coming up against a game style that really troubles her. She's faced a lot of players who strategically know how to take her down. Yulia Putintseva putting shape on the forehand, slicing, throwing in drop shots to make her uncomfortable, both here at Wimbledon, but also in Birmingham beforehand. Then at the French Open, she had Katerina Siniakova, experienced doubles player, moving her around the court as well. And I think that's been a big issue for Osaka, and that's potentially what has caused her to go into this kind of mental wilderness a bit, where she's taking more into account about her surroundings. She's on grass, she doesn't think she likes it. She's suddenly thinking then that maybe there's issues with her that means she's losing these matches. So I have no doubt that Osaka will be back to top form at some point. I don't know when that will be, but I wasn't expecting a brilliant Wimbledon from her. As far as the French Open went, I still thought her big moment mentality would see her through, and I had her as a strong contender for that tournament. Wimbledon, not so much. As for Kerber, she's not a player that I'd given much of a thought. If I'm correct, I believe she made the Eastbourne final last week. And as I said in the previous video, I'm always quite skeptic about players that have done well the week before a slam, because I just don't see them sustaining their form for the full 2 weeks after they've had that strong performance the week before. Looking at her draw, it's not Lauren Davis I would have expected her to lose to, but I think you have to 100% give credit to Davis. She's 5'2", so to put her up there, potentially taking out defending Wimbledon champion on grass, supposedly the fastest surface, isn't something that many people would have done. However, you have to remember, people are saying that the grass is longer this year, which means that the ball's traveling a bit slower, but also Kerber is a counterpuncher, and it was Simona Halep, another counterpuncher capable of great results, that Lauren Davis really had on the ropes at the Australian Open, I think either last year or the year before. 6-4, took her to 10-8 in the deciding set. So Davis is capable of pushing these players, and with Kerber, what I noticed when I was watching that match is that Davis is so small that when she's in the position to hit the ball, and she's often in that position because she moves so quickly, the ball is actually in her strike zone. And with Kerber's ball, it's not traveling very fast, so she has time and positioning to do with the ball exactly what she wants to. Now, this was not all about Davis playing incredibly well. Kerber was off her game a bit. She was throwing in unforced errors, but that's all part of the winning and losing. This is the kind of thing that happens, and it's all about how the opponent deals with that mentally. Davis was lining up for drop shots. She was being the more proactive player in the rallies. She was going for the forehand winners into the corners. And all in all, from what I saw of that match, I thought she thoroughly deserved to win. She won those last two sets incredibly comprehensively. For Kerber, she goes back to the drawing board, but I almost think it was a bit of a surprise when Kerber won the tournament last year. She kind of crept up through the draw with all eyes on Serena Williams, and then took Serena by surprise in the final when Serena hadn't played a counterpuncher before. So for Kerber, I didn't have massive expectations for her for this tournament, but given that she was in decent form heading into the event, there will definitely be some regrets for her. I mean, she's ranked where she is for a reason. Okay, moving on to the next question. It's more of a comment, really. Kyrgios actually wanted to win this time and choked promptly in the tie breaks, just like in Miami against Federer. Amazing how apparently reckless players choke when something's on the line. You know what? I wouldn't call this necessarily a choke. I think that there were some opportunities that Kyrgios didn't take advantage of. For anyone that's here, I would presume that you're aware that the Nadal-Kyrgios highly anticipated second round match finished barely half an hour ago, well, more like 45 minutes now because I'm a bit late. But it lived up to the billing from my perspective. There was a tiny part of me that thought after all the hype and all the excitement, Nadal might actually come out and win it in straights. Just because in Kyrgios' first round match, which he won in 5 sets over Jordan Thompson, I had serious concerns about his fitness. He definitely, the more I hear from him and the more I think about the match, how I watched it, the more I'm pretty certain he deliberately let that 4th set go just because he needed a breather and needed to get his energy back for the 5th set. So I had fitness concerns, and I thought if Nadal pounded Sterling and got the first set, which he did, thought it could end in straights, which it didn't. And to be honest, even though it was only 4 sets and could have gone 5, I thought it was close right down the wire. Nadal definitely was the more clinical in the 3rd set tiebreak, but a very key moment in the 3rd set was, let me try and remember, it was 5-2, and Nadal his big serve had really been helping him, keeping him on the front foot, because before that, when Kyrgios came charging back in the 2nd set with relentless serve and volleys and net play, really asserting himself, I thought he was very much in it to win it. And in my mind, I was almost expecting Kyrgios to come out with the win. I was very, very unsure on this match, but I was leaning towards Kyrgios at one point, just because when he goes in the zone, he can be untouchable at times because he slaps that ball. And in a 3rd set tiebreak, I was kind of expecting a Kyrgios breakthrough, but the key moment was at 5-2 Nadal. I think I wrote it down actually, but I don't know where I put my notebook, so that's not helpful. Here it is. I have so many match notes, I can't actually get through them all. But I do believe 5-2 3rd set, as I've said already. Not going to find it. Okay, so yeah, so serving at 5-2, Nadal hit a big serve, a T serve. He dragged Kyrgios into the middle of the court with that serve and got a short return. So Nadal races up to the short return. Kyrgios is off balance because he's been dragged into the court. The obvious next move is for Nadal to hit back to his backhand wing, unbalancing him further and therefore opening up the space to put away the forehand. Nadal didn't. In one of several brain freeze moments for Nadal during the clash, I thought, he actually hit to Kyrgios' forehand. Kyrgios was already leaning in that direction. The momentum was that way, and he ate that up and fired the passing shot winner. At that point, he's back to 3-5. Nadal's serving. Nadal's serving at this point, and if Kyrgios wins this point, it's pretty much back on serve. He's putting the pressure on. So Nadal serves at 5-3. It's a second serve, and Kyrgios gets himself into a good position in the rally. He's pushing Nadal with the off forehand, and he misses it by a fraction. Now, I'm not sure I would call that a choke, because I think Nadal gave him the opportunity there, but those 2 points I felt were the deciding factor, not just in that tiebreak, but in the set as a whole. And I think the only place you could really say that Kyrgios choked was the back end of the fourth set, because that's when he really let his foot off the gas. But then again, I think that had a lot to do with him tiring out. At the beginning of the match, Kyrgios was very mouthy. The moment he went down a break in the first set, he was complaining to the umpire about the time Nadal was taking between points. Just the usual thing from Kyrgios, just kind of finding things to argue about, to moan about, because he wasn't feeling it. And I think at one point his dad, who was in the stands, did tell him to calm down, and that seemed to have an effect. But I think as the match went on, there was kind of less mouth from Kyrgios, because he was actually potentially feeling the tiredness a bit, because at one point he was on song, he was hitting like fire, and then towards the back end of the match, the unforced errors just started to mount up a little bit. He didn't seem to want to commit to the longer rallies as much, and was therefore going for more on the forehand, was trying drop shots at some questionable times at points. And in that fourth set tiebreak, when Kyrgios had held so superbly throughout the set, bringing out big serves when Nadal got to 30 all during games in that fourth set, I did think Kyrgios had a massive chance, but it was in that fourth set tiebreak that he went cold, which at first to me was slightly confusing, but then I thought, A, he's tiring, and B, this is actually the first point in the match where Kyrgios has really been fighting for his life. Yes, in the fourth set he was 2-1 down, but he was also serving first, so he never had the pressure that Nadal did of having to hold to stay in the set, which would have been holding to stay in the match for Kyrgios. And this, the fourth set tiebreak, was where he was really under pressure. And as I said, if you saw my tweets, this was a Rafael Nadal like we've never seen him before. He was fired up for this match. And there'd been a lot spoken about regarding beef between these two players and comments that have been made in the past. I didn't expect Nadal to be in the frame of mind that he was. He came out and he was so focused and so intense. Kyrgios was trying to get in his head at times, moving about on the baseline when Nadal was trying to serve. And Nadal just did not let him. That match in Acapulco a few months ago, when Nadal was so frustrated at the end because Kyrgios had got to him, he obviously learned from that and wasn't going to let that happen again. And I was just so impressed with the way Nadal was focused from the first point to the last, and then surprised by his intensity throughout and the way he responded at the end, and at points throughout the match when he celebrated like he'd saved his own life. I mean, at the end of the match, he was very... How did I describe it earlier? I don't want to put it like he was had a bad attitude, because he didn't, but I think I said he kept it sharp and civil, went up to the net. Usually Nadal will give his opponent a hug or something, just quick handshake, walked over, shook the umpire's hand first, and then went back onto court and celebrated like he'd won the whole tournament. This was Nadal in business mode, and he wasn't cruel to Kyrgios at the end, but he didn't give him the opportunity to make comments about how Nadal is fine when he wins and salty when he loses, which is what Kyrgios has said previously. I just thought it was intriguing, the entire match, and I've probably gone way off commenting on this, but I did want to say quite a bit about this match, because I think it's gonna... I reckon we'll have some close matches at the business end of the tournament, but as far as intrigue and drama and quality of tennis goes, this match, despite it being 4 sets, not 5, is going to take some beating. I think the only real disappointing moment of the match, as far as Kyrgios goes, was that 4th set tiebreak. Other than that, I could see opportunities for him to win all the way through, and I have to say, credit to him to keep it that close, because Nadal... The further into the match it went, his serve got better, his forehand got sharper, he was so aggressive, and great match. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a brilliant clash. What else have we got? We're looking set for another Federer versus Nadal semi-final. Well, we can't jump ahead of ourselves, but given the draw that Nadal got, which was so difficult, Kyrgios now, and then he goes on to face Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, twice a semi-finalist here. Potentially after that, you know, more seeds, more high-ranked players. Federer in the semis, Djokovic in the final is what it's looking like. To say that he had that put in front of him, he just handled this clash in particular remarkably well, and he seemed to thrive on the occasion, you know, and the way he did that, I don't put it past Nadal to go much further. Federer, on the other hand, there have been moments in his first 2 matches where he's just looked a bit tight, which has been interesting because he was up against 2 players that very, very, very few people, if anyone, was giving a real shot at victory. He had Lloyd Harris, South African, minimal grass court experience in round 1, and Jay Clark, British wildcard, in round 2. I thought Clark did really well, particularly in the second set. He was taking advantage of second serves. He was dropping in drop shots and short slices, just moving Federer around and asking him questions. But at the same time, when Federer got that first serve in, he was not going down today. Absolutely not. And the first serve is so key for Federer. You talk about players like John Isner, who crashed out today, and them having a massive serve. Federer's serve is just as potent and difficult, but not in the same way. When the big servers, with their serve, the ferocity in it is the way they just bang it in. With Federer, it's all about the versatility, the spin he puts on it. It's just as lethal a serve, but in several different ways. It's not so much a flashy serve, I guess. It's more of a strategic serve. And when he gets that first serve in, really difficult to combat. So Federer obviously has a much nicer draw than Nadal. So it would be potentially more of a surprise to see Federer go out before the semis than Nadal, I would say. But let me know if you disagree. Would the game be better with Kyrgios or without him? Sure, he's good and entertaining as a player, but his attitude and behaviour towards umpires is unacceptable. This mirrors a lot, actually, comments that I've made. I don't know if any of you listened into the tennis show last night on Love Sport Radio, which I present alongside Anna Smith, British doubles player. Ros Satar was there as well last night, and Matt Beadle. We were talking about Kyrgios, and Matt asked me what it's like to work in the media and have Kyrgios to report on. He said, is there an element of, oh, he's good for the game and he's good for the media in terms of getting stories out? What I've always said regarding Kyrgios is I think he himself is great for the game. His character, if you watched his first round press conference, it was absolutely hilarious. And this is the thing with Kyrgios, he can be hilarious and he can be unbearable. He's kind of one or the other. But the real thing with Kyrgios is I think his character, great for the game. You know, he's got a great sense of humor. He's got a ridiculous amount of talent. But I think character and attitude are two different things. And at times today, he showed a really bad attitude, inexcusable the way he was speaking to the umpire. And Kyrgios sits there, and I feel like he's kind of out of control of his emotions. We saw it in the first round as well. He wants a fight. He wants an argument. And when the umpires were trying to withdraw from that, both in the first round and the second round, he just almost kind of argued with himself. It's a release for him. He wants to let the emotion out. And unless he's really tired, like we saw at the back end of the match, it's just something he really struggles with. Like I've said already, I hate to sit here looking like I'm judging Nick, because I think that obviously he has some mental and emotional struggles, particularly on the court, and I think he needs help. He doesn't need judging. He needs people to get alongside him. But I'm not in a position to be able to be involved in that. So hopefully something is put in place to help him. I think I'm not sure if this is going to happen, but you have to think that if he had a better, I mean, he's got good people working with him at the moment. He's got his good friend, I think it's Ashcon, who travels with him. But if you look at players on the rise, one of the key things about them is they have this really solid support system around them that isn't just at home, that travels with them, that is kind of with them every step of every day, making sure their head is in the right place, that their physical requirements are met. And maybe Kyrgios needs more of a solid team. Maybe he needs an actual coach, not even just to kind of tell him what to do, but to make sure that he's in an okay place. I can't comment too much more on Kyrgios because I don't want to be that person that sits there offering solutions and almost judging kind of thing. But the thing I will say mainly on Kyrgios is that his game and his character, I think, are great for the sport, but there are obviously areas where he needs a bit of help. I don't think there's any way of getting around that. Someone's backing Nadal to win the whole tournament. Well, after today, he showed real intent, and is honestly, I mean, he's known for his focus and his mentality, but the way he was just zoned in from the first point to the last, utterly brilliant in the circumstances, I thought. Nadal looked solid today. That's an understatement. He struggled for some years at Wimbledon. Could he win it this year? I think Nadal is always giving himself chances, and you have to bear in mind the way the draw might open up as well. Several players on the men's side and the women's side, we've seen them taking advantage of the draw opening up. It's unlikely to happen with Djokovic as far as the final goes, because Djokovic's half has been falling apart since day one, really. Zverev went out, Thiem went out, Tsitsipas went out, all in his half. And they were kind of the biggest contenders for Djokovic in that half. So it's difficult to see much happening to Djokovic unless someone like Felix Auger-Aliassime can step up or something. But, you know, you've got to think that it can open up. You have to remember how Nadal played against Djokovic in the semi-finals last year. Djokovic, remember, rounding back into form, and the roof was on for a good half of that match. Indoor on grass is basically the worst case scenario for Nadal, and yet he took him to 9-7 in the fifth set, playing some stunning tennis. So I have to say, I'm impressed with Nadal today as well, because in his first round he took a while to get going. He was definitely rusty in the first set. He was making some uncharacteristic errors, and to be fair, I think he did the same today. There were some moves that he made where strategically it was a bit iffy, but I think that, you know, he's never going to be my first pick to win Wimbledon, but he's won it twice before for a reason. I remember reading in his book many years ago how he said that French Open to win, Wimbledon was the tournament that motivated him to be a pro tennis player. So I definitely think, you know, if he's here, if he's at the top of the rankings, if he's one of the guys to beat week in, week out, there is no reason why he can't win this event. And if he were to win it, no, he wouldn't be my pick over Federer or Djokovic at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised because he is that good at the end of the day. So that's that one. Djokovic is locked on to win this year. Conditions are tailor-made for him. I mean, yeah, at the moment it couldn't be looking much better for Djokovic when you look at his draw and when you look at the conditions of the grass, longer, slower. And when you look at Djokovic himself, you know, in his first round or two, he's been looking pretty comfortable from what I've seen. The one concern, I guess, for Djokovic could be that he gets to the final and he hasn't really been tested. But this is a guy that's been on tour for so long now that I don't think that will really matter. I think that as long as he's in a good place mentally, he's going to be fine, and he doesn't really need testing. In fact, it's almost better for Djokovic if he gets to the final without having been tested, so that he's got more energy and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't say he's locked on to win it. At the moment, he would be my pick, just because if it came down to him and Federer, I think he'd have the mental edge. But yeah, you know, he will take some beating, Novak Djokovic, and for good reason. I mean, I just remember US Open, was it 2016? I think he won the event with a walkover and 2 retirements, and people were saying, oh, this isn't fair, he's not been tested. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's Novak Djokovic, he's been tested enough, and he deserves every title that he gets. And, you know, he doesn't need a certain amount of preparation to get in places anymore. He's done this enough times to not really need a certain kind of prep. He can just kind of go in there and do his thing. So they're my current thoughts on Novak Djokovic. What else have we got, guys? What do you make of Wimbledon not giving Bernard Tomic a single dime? Oh, after all, he's there because he deserves it. We all have bad days at work. I think he was hard done by. Okay, now I get to talk about Bernard Tomic. You know what? Tomic gets so much stick, and I find Tomic less of a complication than Kyrgios. I think there are so many layers to Kyrgios, whereas I look at Tomic and I think he's actually quite a simple conundrum. With Tomic, I see a guy who had success early on. He has the money, he has the houses, he has the cars, he has all of that, but he hasn't got satisfaction, and he's a guy that's searching, and he's not finding satisfaction from his game, and he doesn't want to work hard, and he's not finding complete satisfaction from these material things. It's quite deep to talk about, you know, but I just see a guy there who's struggling internally because it's people talk about him as immature. I think it's kind of, he's reached a point that not many other people have reached, where he's kind of seen all of this and he's found that it's not fulfilling and he's looking for something more. And that's how I feel it is with Tomic. And therefore, I think I wouldn't go as far as to diagnose him with depression, but I do think there have been mental struggles for him. And, you know, especially on the big stage, why do you think he doesn't have social media? Because he hates the media, he hates the things that are said about him, and he doesn't want to be hearing that. He wants to shut himself away from that. And even if he kind of puts on this front of almost bravado, I think he does care to an extent. And what would I say about him not getting the prize money? I mean, I watched that match against Tsonga. It was a match that I was quite looking forward to. Honestly, I like both players and I like their games. But, it was quite obvious from early on in the match that Tomic wasn't really up for it. He can say he played a bad match, but did he give 100% effort? No. I've watched enough Tomic matches to know that, and if they're coming out with that severe a punishment, obviously other people had noticed that as well. I think they'd sent down a supervisor from like halfway through the match, and the match was very, very quick. It was over in less than an hour, and this is a best of 5 match we're talking about. So, I mean, yeah, maybe it's quite harsh to take away all his prize money, but at the end of the day, the authorities, with stuff that's happening with Tomic, stuff that's happening with Kyrgios, who, by the way, I think are two completely different players, and I understand when Kyrgios is frustrated when they're compared, they're looking for things to do that is going to crack down on this kind of behavior or conduct. And sometimes it has to be harsh to make that a reality. Sometimes they have to be harsh to stop these things from happening. If Tomic was fined half of his prize money, maybe that wouldn't have been strict enough to make him reconsider the next time he's in this situation. Because I guess you have to ask the question, if he didn't come here to play, then what did he come for? The prize money is the obvious answer. So if that gets taken away, that makes him reconsider. But at the same time, just with Tomic, I don't think he rocks up to a tournament from the outset deciding that he's not going to bother playing. I think for him, I think he's like a yo-yo in terms of his emotions, and I think sometimes, he doesn't even know how he's going to play until he steps on the court. I doubt he turned up at Wimbledon thinking, "Oh, I'm going to tank my first match." I just find that very difficult to believe for a guy that's trained for this as well, to be in this position. And you make a good point, he had the ranking to be in the draw. So he's done the work to get there. And I guess there is the argument that at the end of the day, even though there are people watching, etc., who cares what he decides to do once he's there? Because he didn't need a wild card like X amount of players in the draw. He didn't need to qualify. He got there on his own merit. So there is that argument, he got himself there, so who cares what he does? It's a question of ethics at the end of the day. So you can come with a number of arguments, but it's a harsh punishment, yes. But given that this isn't the first time this has happened for Tomic, maybe it's necessary. And I think I'll leave it there on that one, because I've spoken quite a bit. But good question, actually. Good question. I missed one before. What are Corey Goff's chances? I missed. The 15-year-old, as everyone says. It kind of annoys me, Everything you see about her, 15, she's 15. I mean, I judge her as a player in her own right. I strip away the age, and I judge her as I would judge any other player, which is why I was not so impressed by her first round victory. I had her written down to beat Venus Williams before she even stepped out on court, and the more people I've spoken to, the more I've realised that's actually quite a common theme. Most people I've spoken to within the media, within the tennis world, expected her to beat Venus Williams. Because Venus is a legend, yes, has won here many times, yes, but for the time being, because I'm not writing Venus off, for the time being she is struggling. And here's Corey Goff, who's won 3 matches to qualify, is in form, is confident, has this team of people around her who are backing her potential, who are building up her mentality, building up her physical elements, and just backing her to win. And she was primed for that occasion. She was ready for that big stage against that big player. She called it her dream draw. What kind of maturity that displays. So for me, yes, it's impressive the way she executed that victory, but in terms of the physical elements of her game, I wasn't impressed. I thought Venus was flat. I thought she came out, she was serving double faults at key moments. She was not impressive. And I probably commented a bit on about this on the last video, so I'll skim through. But I thought that Goff kind of put the ball in the court, served well. She's 5'9" again. I mean, who cares if she's 15 years old if she's 5'9"? That's still much taller than Lauren Davis, who's several years older. So sometimes it's not about the age. I mean, she's got the height already. She's the same height as Serena Williams. So yeah, she should have a big serve. And that kind of thing. So yeah, I thought, take her age out of the equation, take her lack of experience out of the equation, and that was a decent first round win. Second round against Magdalena Rybarikova, that's more difficult because she has to back up a big result. She has to show that she is the real deal, and I think there's almost more mental pressure on her there because it's Wimbledon as well. Every story is amplified at Wimbledon because it's such a big event. And she was in the spotlight. She was playing against an opponent with a contrasting game style to Venus. Rybarakova slices, dices, drop shots, makes her opponents uncomfortable. And because I was traveling to London for the tennis show yesterday, I actually didn't see that match. But the fact that Gauff was able to win in straight sets, that's impressive because she backed up. And when you say what are her chances, I look at her mentality and I look at her ambition and I say, as Venus Williams said, the sky is the limit. I'm not putting her up there as like my pick to win the events, but you know, she has the mentality, she has the team, she has the game. And you know, who cares if she's 15? At the end of the day, she has the stature. She's well built as well. Taking her age out of the equation, she is a well built girl for the sport, and I think she has chances. And I think she has chances to go further, particularly in the third round where she faces Polona Herczog. Herczog is a player that's been on the scene for a long time, but kind of wasn't performing so much over the past few years. She's come back almost with a vengeance this year. She's had the likes of Simona Halep on the ropes. She's got an interesting game to watch, big serve, can execute a good slice. So that has the potential to be interesting because she's gone from facing two opponents who've done well at Wimbledon in the past on big stages to now facing an opponent where she is arguably the favourite to come through. One interesting aspect about this upcoming clash, and I will move on from this in a minute because I feel like I've spoken about it for a while. Corey Gauff and Polona Herczog, two players who I believe are ranked outside the top 100, have been scheduled on centre court. This has happened over players who are seeded, many players who are seeded, who have been put on outside courts. Even Novak Djokovic, the world number one, who's playing Hubert Hurkacz, that should be a good match. I mean, they played in the first round of the French and Djokovic swatted him aside, but Hurkacz is in good form. It's a third round match. He's got a couple of matches under his belt. That's on court one. And essentially, for all Gauff's talent and potential, a match that you could rock up to an ITF event and watch for free is on centre court for fans that have queued overnight and are paying decent money to watch this lineup. I've gone off a bit on a tangent there, but I just think that's so wrong from the organisers. So wrong. Marta Kostyuk, I've got that right, yeah. 15 years old she was when she reached the third round of the Australian Open. When was she scheduled on a show court just because she was a promising young talent? It didn't happen because it shouldn't happen. This shouldn't be happening. And I don't have a concern about it affecting Gauff's mentality in a bad way. Because actually, the thing here for me is I think this is helping her. She's clearly got a mentality that is made for the big stages, and she's so focused. And when she's on a big show court like that, the crowd love a feel-good story, so they're all getting behind her. And she's utilising that to her advantage. So I think the fact that she's been scheduled on a show court, centre court no less, again, is actually going to help her. And I would not be surprised to see her walking into that fourth round. But that's just thoughts from me. If you have any differing opinions, then let me know, because this is quite interesting. But what are the organisers thinking there? I mean, come on. Two players ranked outside the top 100 on centre court. I mean, if I was a fan queuing, paying £100+ for a ticket, I however well she's played, I would not be happy. I'd be expecting to see Novak Djokovic up there, or someone of the same calibre. What are we up to? Are players with attitude a good thing for the sport, or is it just a distraction from competition? Attitude's in quotation marks here. I will say what I said again. Character, good. Attitude, bad. I never like attitude, really. When you talk about attitude and someone having attitude, it's generally a bad thing. Let's not lie. So I think character is good. I think, you know, players being individual as well, you're not just confining to this one image, you know, being themselves. You know, Kyrgios mentioned in his first round press conference, he says he didn't know why so many people had an issue with him playing differently. He said everyone's different. And I get him. He has a point, 100%. People should not have an issue with people being different. What people have an issue with, I think largely with Kyrgios, is not what he does on the court. It's the way he goes about things. It's the way he argues at the drop of a hat. It's his attitude. It's not what he's doing on the court necessarily. I mean, if someone has a problem with his underarm serves, then, I mean, I have a problem with that, because he's perfectly entitled to hit those underarm serves. They're good. They're strategic. But, you know, I think it's mainly his attitude that people have a problem with. And I would never say that attitude is a good thing for the sport. Maybe it's good for raising the profile of the sport and getting more people watching it and getting people interested. Kyrgios is a dream when it comes to publicizing the sport. I know people in real life, like face to face, who would know Kyrgios because of the things he's done and the controversy he's been in, but wouldn't know the likes of Dominic Thiem, who's been in multiple Grand Slam finals, which is wrong to me. You know, players should be known for their results and their ability as opposed to throwing a chair on the court or something like that. So yeah, that's my answer there. I hope it answers your question. But are players with attitude a good thing for the sport, or is it just a distraction from the competition? Yeah, I think it's a distraction. And I think there are ways. This is a great sport we have here. It's we've seen today, you know, from the Nadal Kyrgios match, from other matches, the Kerber match getting upset, you know, Cilic going out in straights. Jose Mourinho was sat courtside watching that on court 12. There is so much drama and excitement in this sport anyway. We don't need attitude. This sport should sell itself because it's a great sport and it's got great competitors who've worked their socks off to get to where they are. So we don't need attitude. Someone says, I put Kvitova as my new favourite after watching her today. Kvitova's been one of my favourites from the outset of the tournament. As I've said, she doesn't need momentum to do something great. In fact, the 2 Wimbledons that she's won previously, she didn't have momentum before those tournaments. And she's becoming a player now, Kvitova, that I never thought we'd see. She's becoming consistent. Time and again, she's producing at back-to-back tournaments, whether it's Grand Slams, whether it's Premier events, she's coming out and she's delivering. Obviously, she was injured slightly before this event, so she's not had match practice, but in a way that's almost a good thing. No one's had the opportunity to face her on grass. They almost don't know what they're up against. She's had 2 good straight sets wins over Ons Jabeur and Kristina Mladenovic in the second round. Mladenovic win particularly impressive, I think, because even though Mladenovic is slightly out of form, she's also got so much going on in her game. She's got Sasha Bayan on her side now. She's got a very supportive team around her. Notice my own pun there. Sorry. She doubles player, obviously, so got that variation in her game. And she's someone that has so much confidence in herself as well, so would have stepped up to Kvitova. I feel a bit sorry for her in a way because it's obvious the work everyone's been putting in for her and her game, and that's a tough draw, Kvitova second round, but it's what you're up against when you're not high enough to be seeded. And I think that Kvitova handled it well. She was down in the first set, but the thing with Kvitova is she's so essentially attacking minded with that lefty forehand, with the big serve. She's not waiting for the opponent to mess up. She's going after it, and she's going after the win. She's not waiting for her opponent to lose, as it were. And so that's 2 potentially really tricky opponents that she's put to bed in straight sets. Great for her. And yeah, for me, Kvitova's definitely up there. My picks for the French Open, it's kind of similar. My picks for the French were Osaka, Serena, and Kvitova. And for Wimbledon, my 3 big picks would be Barty, Kvitova, and Serena. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt, even though I have my doubts. I'm giving her the benefit because she's Serena and she's wowed so many times before. So we shall see. We shall see. Did you ever watch the Wimbledon 2008 final? I'm hoping Federer and Nadal will meet each other again this year, only it would be in the semis this time. I don't remember the whole final. It was around 2008 when I started following the sport consistently, so I remember 2008 Wimbledon, not so much the final, but obviously I've rewatched on YouTube and stuff, and it was an epic. It could potentially be amazing, you know, Nadal versus Federer, especially when you consider, you know, Federer had Nadal's number so much, and then they met at the French and Nadal went in straights. So it really is on grass courts, I guess you'd be more inclined to take Federer, but with the result Nadal just produced and the players he would have had to come through to get to Federer, it would almost be quite a 50-50 thing, and definitely something to keep an eye out for, and not a match anyone would want to be missing, I don't think, if they're into tennis at all. Let's see. Nadal won or Kyrgios quit? Kyrgios did not quit. I think it is a case of Kyrgios' fitness not quite being where it needs to be. Nadal was on fire, and Kyrgios right at the end, you know, mental pressure, physical pressure, just couldn't quite hold out, which was slightly surprising, but it's credit to Kyrgios' ability that it wasn't more, that it was a surprising even as it was, because even though Kyrgios has been quite open about how he's not as fit as he could be, and yet people are surprised that he faded off at the end of the fourth set. What should have been more of a surprise, given his current state, is that he kept the match as close as he did and had very rawly, insanely talented. And no, he didn't quit. Nadal won it straight up. I mean, if you're going to say that a player quit every time they're just not fit enough or they've been outplayed, it's not really given much credit to the eventual champions of the matches, you know? Which is your favourite grass court tournament outside of Wimbledon, and why? This is a nice question. Well, generally, I've worked at several different events. Nottingham will always have a special place in my heart just because that is the first event I ever went to as media, and full stop, because the first time I actually went and saw a tennis event and tennis matches live was like when I went as media when I was 18. So Nottingham, forever grateful to Nottingham for being the kind of the springboard for me. And then I love working at, it's not an official event, but generally, I can't say this is going to be the case every year, but last week I was at Boodles, and it's such a fun event to work at because the players are so chilled out, and I did all the post-match interviews for the camera after they came off court. And I say they're so chilled out, there were one or two actually this year that weren't in the best of moods. I think that as the years go on, the exhibition becomes more serious because it's the week before Wimbledon and they are all trying to get prepped. But you know, it's great, Boodles. The players can have a bit of a laugh on court. They're chilled out afterwards when you speak to them. And it's just such a relaxed and friendly vibe. Stoke Park is glorious. It is such a nice place. I felt out of place the first time I went there. It was so posh. I was like, what am I doing here? But, you know, I do love Boodles. So, yeah, they would be the two for me. Isn't Song a more dangerous opponent for Nadal than Kyrgios? Nadal's draw is brutal. Fair point. Because I've followed Tsonga for so many years, I've been following him quite closely of late. Tsonga's been injured a lot recently, and that's certainly hit him. Tsonga's never been the most consistent player anyway. He's absolutely fantastic. I would put him up there as one of the most talented. Obviously, he's beaten all of the big four multiple times. He's beaten them all at Grand Slams. He's stepped up in that respect in ways other players have failed to. One of my most vivid tennis memories growing up is watching Nadal, not Nadal, Nadal on the brain here. Tsonga beat Federer from 2 sets to love down on centre court. Absolutely phenomenal. And just attacking, you know, swinging. He's got such a booming game. He's got massive serve, forehand. His backhand isn't as bad as people make out. You know, he can come to the net. But the thing with Tsonga is he is streaky and he is inconsistent, and it's been a theme throughout his career. He got through today in straights, which was good for him, because a theme with Tsonga as well is a match, a best of 5 match that he could win in straights. He often just kind of dilly-dallies around, loses a third set he could have won and wins in 4. But actually, he's played 2 matches now against Tomic, which was in some senses a virtual walkover, and against Ricardas Berankis, who'd taken out Denis Shapovalov in straights, and Shapovalov was at Boodles last week, playing amazing. And just briefly there, that shows the difference, you know, between these exhibition events and the Grand Slam, because Shapovalov was on fire last week. He was telling me how he was just kind of going out and slapping every ball and it was working. He beat Djokovic. But you come to a slam and that whole mental pressure makes everything so much different. So Berankis obviously got that win over Shapovalov, and Tsonga beat him in straights. He could have won the first set more easily, but the fact is he was there for the big moments, came through. The thing with Tsonga is he is short on matches. He's probably a bit low on confidence because he hasn't been getting the big wins. And therefore, from the outset of the draws, I would have called Kyrgios a more dangerous opponent for Nadal, because in contrast, at the moment, Kyrgios, these are the matches that he actually gets up for. With Tsonga, you know, he can kind of get through the players he needs to beat and then kind of look a bit out of place sometimes these days further on. But Kyrgios, in contrast, you know, can get beaten by anyone sometimes, and then comes out and plays a blinder against the big guys. So, but in a way, you know, Tsonga has done so well at Wimbledon in the past. I know he made the final at the Australian Open in 2008, a long time ago now, but Wimbledon has been his most consistent slam, arguably. To be fair, you know, he's done really well at the Australian Open, the French Open, and Wimbledon. I still don't think Tsonga's given enough credit for what he's done. You look at players that have gone higher than him in the rankings: Alexander Zverev, David Ferrer, Dominic Thiem, And they've just timed it right. They've always risen up the rankings when one or other of the big four has been struggling physically, mentally, has just not been at the top. Tsonga peaked when the big four were peaking. So Tsonga hit number 5 in the world as his career high when the big four were all at the peak of their powers. So he couldn't go any further because they were this roadblock. And it's just unfortunate for Tsonga that he didn't peak at another time, because for sure he could have won a slam. For sure he could have won multiple slams, but he didn't. So Tsonga's dangerous, but it all depends on him coming out and playing big and just swinging, really. He can't afford to put too much pressure on himself because of the lack of match practice and that kind of thing. And you know, personally, I feel 100% he has the game to take out Nadal, especially on grass, which is not Nadal's best surface. But he needs to go out there swinging. He cannot put any kind of pressure on himself, because if Nadal comes out with the form and focus he was in today, there are going to be few opportunities. But for sure, he's dangerous. This is why we were all talking about Nadal having such a killer draw, because Tsonga is big time. He's serious, you know. So I think that's another potentially. I mean, it could be a Nadal straight sets win, but with Tsonga's talent, it has the potential to be a good one. Who of the big three do you think will end up with the more Grand Slams? That's not particularly Wimbledon focused, but we can make it so because it all depends on mentality. I think that of the three of them, Federer's body is the most reliable in terms of, I mean, Djokovic had 2 years of struggling with injury. Federer's had that 6 months that was a serious issue. So it's a mental thing for Federer, and if he can allow his mental state to be in the position to get these big events. For Nadal, it's more of a physical question. How long can his knee hold out? How long can his back hold out? And for Djokovic as well, it's kind of 50-50. So it's difficult to say. I mean, if Nadal keeps winning the French Open alone for a few more years and Federer struggles mentally, he's already surpassing Federer. Djokovic is potentially a winner anywhere and everywhere. So I don't dare call it at the moment. I really don't. I think, you know, you can see that gap closing between all of them, but particularly Nadal and Federer, and pretty much locked on for the French Open most years. So, you know, it's not just about who's the most talented or who does this best or who does that best. It's about where they are. It's timing. You know, tennis is so much about timing when you're hitting the shots, but in a wider sense, when you're producing your best tennis. And I'm not a prophet, so it's very, very hard to say, let's put it that way. What is going on with Garbiñe Muguruza? Is she done? And how do you rate Simona Halep's chances this Wimbledon? Ooh, Muguruza is not done. She's far too young to be done, and far too talented. You know, she was one player that I was comparing a little bit to Serena a while back, and it was Muguruza when she was 18 that I really had my eye on. She was almost brushed under the carpet at times until she got that win over Serena at the French Open in the second round, and then she was on the radar. She's great because she has a game that does translate well to all surfaces. You'd maybe, I don't know which. See, this is a tribute to the fact that she plays well across all surfaces, because I don't know how you would pick one surface to kind of single her out on. Yes, she's a Spaniard and her game's a good fit for clay, but you know, the first final that she reached was Wimbledon, and then she went on to return to the final and win it. So I mean, two of her Grand Slam victories have come over a Williams in the final, and in terms of the mentality, you don't get much bigger victories than that. So, what is going on with Muguruza? I think that it's hard to say. It is hard to say. What I'm impressed with about Muguruza is that she's stuck with Sam Summick, her coach. People have branded that relationship toxic, etc. They don't have the most pleasant on-court coaching exchanges at times. But I think it shows a real commitment from the two of them. And it shows, from Summick's side, it shows a belief of what she's capable of, because he's a good coach. He could easily leave her side and get picked up by someone else, no problem. But Muguruza, sticking with him, shows that she's seen some progression in the partnership and she sees somewhere it can go. So I think that's interesting. I think the fact that they're sticking together says a lot. She's not done. I actually said at the beginning of this year, and time is running out, she has one more chance. I said one of my predictions for this year was that Garbiñe Muguruza would win a slam, because she's so talented, and she had such a poor year by her standards last year that my thinking was the only way is up. It's looking less likely now, but I do think that, you know, with the focus that she has that can't be matched by some players sometimes, and just the all-round solidness of a game when it's on, and the ferociousness of her forehands, the key element of her serve, which I think Halep lacks, the first serve. She's definitely not a player you can write off. Against Haddad Maia, it was Beatrice Haddad Maia she lost to in the first round, and straight sets I think it was. In Haddad Maia, I thought I was almost looking at a lefty version of Muguruza at times. So she kind of hit a similar ball, but she was throwing in the slice as well. And Muguruza just didn't have a best day, and it was enough to frustrate her. That's just how it goes sometimes. Muguruza has now lost 2-1 at Wimbledon since winning the title. So, I mean, she didn't have a great year last year. She's not had much grass court play, and that can sometimes come into things. But you can go round and round in circles with Muguruza. She's one of those players that I'd have to really sit down and watch a match and look into it to see the sorts of things that are going wrong. But like I say, you know, the fact that that coaching partnership is still going says that they believe they can take it somewhere, for sure. How do I rate Halep's chances? She's not up there as a massive contender for me. I think I commented a bit on Halep in the last video, actually. You know, she can play grass court tennis. I think it was injury more than Eugenie Bouchard that stopped her making the final in 2013. I think as time has gone on, that much is kind of obvious. But, I mean, Halep at the end of the day is by nature a counterpuncher. Yes, Kerber came and won the title last year, but generally it is more of the power players that are coming away with the title here. And she plays Victoria Azarenka next. Now, it's after the Azarenka match, if she's still here, that we can really assess where Halep's at. She looked to struggle a bit in her first 2 rounds, and maybe that's good for her because maybe people play down her chances a bit and she's playing under less pressure. But, you know, Azarenka, it's hard to call that match because Azarenka played so well to beat Ayla Tomljanovic. She was controlling. But the thing with Azarenka this year is she's had 1 or 2 really good wins, and then she's gone to pieces in her next match, or she's lost a heartbreaker. It's just her confidence just wobbles sometimes. So it's almost a case of will Azarenka's mentality or Halep's physicality win out in that match? And that's a must watch, that 3rd round, because even though I probably don't see either of those 2 players going to the title, it's just interesting for them themselves and seeing where each player goes from here. So yeah, that's my thoughts, Ori Halep. We've been going for just under an hour, so I'll give it a few more minutes and then I'll wrap up. Do you think Serena Williams will recover and play good max potential tennis? Today was a big mess. Juvan didn't play great, but Serena missed so much and gave away so many chances and easy shots. Yeah, after the first round, I was very harsh in my assessment of Serena. Everyone was praising her coming through in straights, but I was not impressed at all. I watched her so much, you know, she was playing Julia gatto-montincone, better suited to clay, and I just knew early on from her whole body language that she was going to make a big deal of it. She should have won that match so much more easily. Then she's playing Kaja Juvan, who's a girl I've seen at ITF level, has a career high ranking of world number 1, 2, 3. Yes, she's 18 and she's up and coming, and she was playing with a good mentality, I thought, kind of swinging a bit and playing from inside the baseline at times and showing real confidence. But Serena should not have been struggling in that match, and you know, she just wasn't. She was sloppy from what I saw early on. She was struggling to put a ball in the court, she was struggling to respond to her opponent, and more importantly, she was letting Juvan play from inside that baseline, which is such a bad sign because it shows she's not controlling from the baseline, which is what she's supposed to do so well. And then when she was trying to do the short cross-court shots, so she was missing more than she should. But the thing with Serena is, throughout both those 2 matches, we've seen her struggle in this kind of match before many times over the years. And at one point she was called the comeback queen. She finds a way to come through. Even when she was struggling, really struggling, I did not seriously think she was going to lose to Kaja Juvan. If I've got that pronunciation right. She's too good mentally for that to happen. And when she did lose to Kenin at the French Open, I had a few more doubts in my mind, because that's the sort of clash that over the years Serena would have got emotional, got frustrated, poured that into a game and come through, and she didn't against Kenin. She kind of wilted under the pressure. And therefore that's made me more tentative when I look at her title chances at Wimbledon. That's what made me raise my eyebrows when she announced she's playing mixed doubles with Andy Murray, because yeah, there's an argument of you wanting more match play, but there's also an argument that you need to focus all your attention on your singles game, because it's going to pot a bit at the moment. So kind of lost where I am, but if you take recent occasions out of the equation, the Serena Williams that has come through these first two rounds is a Serena that we've seen many times before, getting the rust out of her system early on and preparing to charge her way to the title. But it's very different to what we saw here last year, which was less than a year after she'd given birth, and she pretty much rolled her way to the final. Yeah, she struggled a bit against Camilla Giorgi, but all in all, didn't have much trouble. So it's a bit of a mixed bag from Serena at the moment, but when you say, do you think she'll recover and play good maximum potential tennis? I think Serena peaked around 2013, when not only was she playing knockout tennis and winning 6-1, 6-2 most matches, but she was able to play a complete schedule. I think she ended the year with a 78 wins to 4 losses record, which is insane. She can't play that much tennis anymore because her body can't take it. She has to be smarter with her scheduling, which is fine. But because she's older, no, I don't think she's going to reach the heights of 2013 again. However, there are many opportunities for her to win more Grand Slams, because she reached the first 2 finals of the slams that she played since coming back. You know, she's still got all the talent. It's about being in the physical place to be able to produce and execute that. And for Serena, it's less about her body aging and more about her just being able to shake off 1 or 2 nagging injuries and get herself in a good place. I mean, one of the reasons I was surprised she's playing mixed is because she has struggled with injury. And it's hard for me not to think, because Serena's been so focused over the years. My immediate thought when she said she was playing mixed doubles was, have you lost some of that focus? Do you have the same confidence in yourself that you had before? Because the Serena Williams of 2 years ago, I don't think would have, or 3 years ago, I don't think would have taken up that offer. I think she'd have been staying well away from the doubles court and keeping her secrets secret in terms of what she is able to do on court and what she isn't, and coming out to play each singles match with ultra laser focused determination. It's a bit of a confusion for me. I see her point when she needs matches, but you know, she's playing with Andy Murray as well. Like, is it more for the profile and the story? Is that why she's doing it? It's just a bit confusing for me at this point. But you know, Serena has done so much throughout her career, and you just have to give her the benefit of the doubt at the end of the day that she knows what she's doing, that this mixed doubles thing works for her and gives her the practice that she needs. And for sure, you know, she still has the ability. On her day, she's still the best ever, and certainly has chances at this tournament if she's feeling 100% physically. Right, wrapping this up in a couple of minutes. So right, I'm gonna limit this really to Wimbledon questions only, just because we're running short on time. I've had a question here about the Laver Cup and the ATP making another new ATP Team Cup. The question is, do you think it could make tennis even more popular without turning the ATP Tour into a Football World Cup? I stand by my saying that tennis, how it is, has attracted fans throughout the years. It's best of 5 sets, and you don't have trouble getting tons of people, thousands of people queuing up overnight to get into Wimbledon. You don't have a problem packing out stadiums. Tennis, how it is, attracts the crowd. And does it need an audience as big as football? I don't think it does. It has more than enough of a crowd to give it the money that it needs, to give it the publicity that it needs. And when you say, what do you think could make tennis even more popular without turning it into a Football World Cup? You know, if people can't appreciate the sport for the legends it has at the moment and the quality they're able to produce, they're obviously just not the kind of person to enjoy tennis, because we kind of have it all right now, in my opinion, without needing to make any further changes in terms of format or tournaments, etc., etc. Okay. Rightio, gonna wrap this up here. Thank you very much for your questions. We had some really interesting ones there. If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to hit subscribe. We're very close to 2,000 subscribers. It's taken a little bit of time to get there because I've just been terrible at uploading and I've had other things going on, but I'm trying to be more committed to the channel now. So if you enjoy me rambling, then please support that and hit subscribe. Remember to rock up for the next Q&A, which will be coming after the third round of Wimbledon. Most likely we'll have had more upsets by then because they just never stop coming. It's been a wild tournament so far, but incredibly interesting. And hopefully you can bring some more questions next time and we'll have another good old chat about what's gone well, what hasn't, and how things might look for the rest of the tournament. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.